Women of Reddit, what are things men do that scares you but they don't realize? Jokingly using your strength to move me or keep me from moving. If I want to go home and you're pulling me back, I am not actually going along with it. You are stronger than I am and I literally cannot leave. Calling them beautiful as much as possible. Once or twice is nice, if you know them. But if you don't know the guy and he says it too much, it freaks me out. Driving really aggressively and having road rage. When I was younger and dating, I had so many experiences as a passenger with young guys who were otherwise normal but really intense and scary when they got behind the wheel. It always seemed like a red flag. I've been approached several times in public by random men who say they want to be friends with me. One leaned in really close to have a conversation and asked me where I was from and where I live. Another grabbed my hands and remarked on how soft my skin is. Another one literally locked arms with me and dragged me to a coffee shop to get to know me, and then later told me to come with him to a more private place for a view of the city. I weakly joke about it sometimes, but in the moment it really does make me nervous. I don't know if I just look really unimposing. I'm an Asian woman but I'm taller than average. But I'm not sure why it happens. Regardless, please don't just grab random women, even out of friendliness, and respect personal space. Wanting to go to a secluded location if I don't know you well. People on Tinder would suggest going on hikes or taking a walk after dinner on first dates. Didn't even cross their minds that I would not want to be alone with them on a date. Hit on you in locations where you cannot escape, enclosed places like elevators or workplaces. Flirting is fun so long as you don't flirt by asking me where I live and if I live alone. And, as an expat, if I know people in the area. If you want to chat, flirt, get to know me, don't start with the questions that set off alarm bells in my head. Breaking or hitting things out of anger. Standing in doorways blocking exits. Following you to your car to get your number. Don't ever do that. While talking online and I say I don't know about meeting up and their response is you are more likely to be raped by someone you actually know in person. Yup, not meeting up now. Thinking no isn't the final answer. Believing that with a little more convincing and I'll say yes. It makes me believe you don't respect me and worries me how far you will go after I say no. Blocking my path or physically holding me in place if they are not done talking to me. Basically, using more strength size to restrict my motion in any way. Information hunting. If you have a convo with a woman and she doesn't readily give you information about her, like where she lives, her phone number, etc. That is not a challenge for you to go to her friends, stalk social media, etc. to get that information. This also applies to men. Obvs, unless there was a situation at a party where, IDK, a woman said she wanted to give you her number but forgot by the end of the night. Edit. For everyone who keeps responding then she didn't want you to have her number. I'm talking about a situation with very clearly and specifically defined consent for the number to be given. Like IDK, she had her phone out to add his number and was about to give hers and something accidental happened to prevent it. Like a very drunk friend puking on their shoes and needing immediate attention. IDK, how anyone could read the entirety of my comment and think my implication was to get a number without genuine consent from the person who meant to give it, or if you're trying to get a homework assignment, find someone to cover a work shift. There should never be a conversation that starts with, "Hey, I got your number from this random person who thought I was your friend when I'm not." If you have chemistry with someone, you'll both want to get to know each other naturally through the conversation and follow up. Not so much by treating that person like a research article and doing everything you can to dig up information on them. Like adding someone as a friend on Facebook because they're a friend of a friend. Totally normal. Talking about a subject they've made a post about. Or an interest on their profile. Alright. Sliding into their DMs like, "Hey, we met at this random place and talked for maybe 5 minutes, but I got your last name from a mutual friend and then googled you until I found your profile and other info, and I see from a post you made 6 weeks ago that you saw this movie at the theater local to you, so how about I meet you there for a movie this weekend?" I get that movies, TV shows have implied that people should be into the thrill of the chase or whatever, but if you're interested in someone, you'll respect boundaries. Liking every single picture with my face on Instagram in a period of like 2 minutes. So I'm recently single, over a month, and so far I've had guy mates pop into my DMs being friendly but certainly pushy. A couple of these were asking random questions that started getting a little personal under the guise of friendliness. Here's one of those conversations. This was a very old friend that I have not spoken to or seen in 12 years. Due to friend groups growing up and growing apart, we weren't really close either. Just same friend group. Him, oh, you're single now. I thought you guys were buying a house together. Me, yup. I broke it off. Him, I see you go walking. Where do you walk? Me, just around a few places. Nowhere specific. Him, do you still live at place? Me, no, I moved from there 7 years ago. Him, oh really, you moved? Where do you live now? Me, still with ex-partner until I move out soon. Him, oh, where you moving to? I lied here and named a large town nearby. Him, will you be living alone? Also lied that I'll have roommates. I get you're trying to have a friendly life catch up with me after 12 years. But there's an internal pressure to be nice despite me not being comfortable sharing certain information. Especially knowing that I may be alone soon. So I need to be careful with the things I share. Also adding, this guy has a serious long-term GFR. Anytime someone tries really hard to convince me he's a nice guy, every guy I've met that desperately brings it up every chance he gets isn't usually very nice. It always makes me wonder, what are they trying to hide? Like, why do I have to think you're nice? Prove it with your actions. Don't tell me repeatedly. Standing too close, even without COVID. Social distancing is a thing. Stay out of my personal space. More annoying than scary, but telling women to smile. I feel like I have to make a clarification. This post was mainly meant for women to be able to highlight the small things guys do that can be perceived as creepy or scary. I'm happy to have this much engagement in the comments, but I feel like it's unnecessary to argue about the practical views on this. This isn't so much this is scary because men wants to hurt me, it's this feels scary. Please listen and understand that people think differently and what scares some don't scare everyone. If you cannot do that, then this post is not for you and I kindly ask you to leave. Keep asking why when I say no. To me this says you don't care, it's a no. You'll do it anyway. Making abuse jokes. Random touching and prodding. Had some guys in school that would just come up and poke you in the sides. Freaked me the duck out. Messages you on a dating app commenting on having found your profile and that they are in the same location as you. They can see you but you can't see them. I had a guy do this on a fully packed train I was on to go to work. I'm not an anxious person, but it felt really uncomfortable. When I was on dating sites, I would get a message of an up yours. I would respond with something like, what was that for? I know I shouldn't respond to those. Then they would reply saying, oh sorry, don't know how that happened. How are you? If you do this to get attention of girls online, please stop. You aren't doing yourself any favors. When a guy won't give up, he doesn't even have to be physically present. Being an adamant D over text is enough to terrorize you sometimes. Calling me sweet pet names like honey and sweetheart in a normal conversation, like at the shopping counter or anywhere else I ask a question or mention something. Most of the time they don't even realize that they start with that and I'm annoyed at it, but for some reason it freaks me out when they call me that and I don't know them. IDKY. Excessive and generalized compliments. Egg, you're so beautiful, you're so awesome, you're amazing over and over again. A few times it's fine. But when it gets excessive you realize they're putting you on a pedestal, and they're not actually complimenting you. They're complimenting this dream version of you they've made up, evidenced by the fact the compliments are never specific to who you actually are. Also makes you wonder if they're the type to think if you insert enough compliments then you're obliged to give them something back. Staring. Oh my god, the staring. It's not cute. It's not attractive. I don't know you like that. To clarify, this is for the guys who think it's cute to stare when in reality it's creepy, not guys who are literally thinking about if they turned off the stove or not while someone is accidentally in their line of sight. When they fail to understand why movies with abuse and general violence directed towards women make me uncomfortable. When I say I don't like something he said or did or joked about and he says you secretly like it, that makes my skin crawl and alarm bells start going off. Don't tell women what they like. joking about mugging or assaulting us. I was on the subway, returning home, and a group of tall guys were watching me play my Switch. One of them decided to swagger right up behind me, so that he was breathing over my shoulder, while his friends joked about let's mug and assault her for that Switch. I'm less than 120 pounds. It wouldn't take much to force me against a wall and I couldn't escape. I could easily be mugged, beaten, raped. I was surrounded by people, thankfully, but having one of them in my personal space, while his buds laughed about assaulting me, had me terrorized the entire commute home. They got off at the same station I did, so I used a completely different exit and took a detour to shrug them off. I didn't want them knowing which direction I normally used. Refer to men as men but women as females. It's dehumanizing and a red flag. Raising their voice in anger, even if it isn't directed at me, triggers a flight response. An obvious one I know, but I think some men have no idea how scary that is. Also, grabbing or hugging me from behind as a surprise. Solid way to trigger a panic attack. As a dude reading this comment section, all I have to say is WTF. Like grabbing someone and pulling them around to show your strength? Are you serious? Asking bartenders where they live and when their shift ends? Like, dude, just WTF. The complete inability to see an ideal situation from a woman's perspective. Instantly getting defensive when you mention something men do makes you uncomfortable. But I don't do that. Okay, cool. But can you see this might make someone half your size feel? Whenever a guy does this, I realize they have a serious empathy problem and makes me not want to be around them. What happens if they lose their temper, are intoxicated, etc, so their inhibitions are even lower? No thanks. Not worth the risk. Also, I try not to spend time with closed-minded people, so that automatically rules them out of my friend group. When they keep trying to win you over after you've said no. I have some gay friends who've had guys keep texting and flirting after they've said out loud I am not straight. Please stop. Trying to sleep with me when I am very obviously not interested. When I confront them, they just say, can't blame a guy for trying. WTF. Parking right next to my car in a darkened or empty car park. I've had this conversation with several girlfriends, but when I've mentioned it to men, they had no idea about what goes through our mind when we see that. Men arguing with women about how consent is relative and they're being discriminated against for being gross creeps. Don't touch me if I just met you. Don't try to touch my nipples on the first date. That is so creepy and weird, and I hate when they put their hand too low on your back, like just don't touch me bro, we're not there yet. Getting really intense about our friendship really early on. A lot of guys turn women into this kind of fantasy thing that's supposed to make them whole, help them change or whatever. Sir, I am the main character in my own life, not just a supporting one in yours. When you put that pressure on me right away, abs without reciprocation, I know that I don't actually matter. You've been taught that women serve you. When I was in the service industry, men flirting with me always made me really nervous. At that point, I was in a position where my whole job is to make the customer happy, and that would often be very at odds with my personal sense of this guy is creepy and I want him to go away. When you're on the clock, you have to be nice to people. You can't just tell a guy who is making you uncomfortable to duck off, nor can you just up and leave, especially if you're manning the register. You have to sit there and take it and play nice, and hope to God that they don't wait for you to get off shift so they can talk to harass you outside of work. Touching me without my permission. I wish I could punch the people who said subtle touching is a great way to show someone that you're interested in them. No. Don't touch me. I don't know you and you're in my personal space. English isn't my first language, so I can't really generalize this, but asking if I need a ride and keep pestering me when I decline. I used to walk home from school when this old man literally parked his car in front of me while I was crossing a small parking lot and asked if I needed a ride. I lied and said the house at the end of the block was my house. He did it a bunch more times until I had to change my walking route. It was a longer way, but I felt safe again. Night out in the pub. There will always be one guy commenting that I haven't drunk much. Oh, you're still on your first glass of wine. You drink slow. Why aren't you drinking, etc. Why are you counting my drinks? Creepy as F. Strangers complimenting me on my body really freaks me out. I also don't like people commenting on my hair. But that's because I'm ginger and I get a lot of sexualized comments. I once got fed up and asked someone to back off when they were doing this. Tried to be polite but firm. He responded by graphically threatening to abuse me and followed me for 3 blocks. Not the only time I've gotten that kind of reaction. When you say you have a beautiful figure, it's not a confidence boost. I'm not grateful. I'm thinking of the men who have this kind of reaction lurking just under the surface of that compliment, and I'm wondering if I'm in a dangerous situation. Asking for way too much information. Where I live. Specifically, not just which city. Who I live with. Oh, it must be scary living alone. Do you have any animals? Where I work, what hours I work. Nearly wanting a schedule of my life in order to schedule a date. And then wanting to go on secluded dates or calling up to my work to try and see if we could meet for lunch because I wasn't answering my phone. X said he'd bust into my apartment out of concern for my safety if I didn't answer the door or his calls texts. He lived right next door. BTW. When I said that it's called breaking and entering and grounds for calling the police, he said it'd be pointless because the police were his friends and therefore wouldn't do anything. Translation? I can do anything I want and you can't stop me. So I call the police anyway and they made him stop. He began to fill my mailbox with love letters and saying if I continued to ignore him, he'd move. I did continue and he made a big production of moving out. I closed my curtains and ignored him. It's scary when a man thinks a woman is weak and can bully her and finds out differently. Grab you from behind at night to surprise you. My ex-boyfriend, 6FT, 185 lbs, did this. He was on a trip and came back 2 days earlier and decided to surprise me. I was coming back from university at 9 PM and I felt that someone grabbed me and covered my face with their hands when I was about to enter my building. When I yelled, he let me go and he didn't understand why I insulted him and got angry. I don't cry easily, but it took me 3 hours for the tremors to go away. Till that I've been inadvertently scaring the id out of women in multiple ways for many years. Common female discussion. Unsolicited nudie pics. Equivalent to those creeps who hide behind the bushes trying to flash you. People need to realize 1 in 4 women have had some kind of sexual assault. Save it for your partner, or risk getting blasted or viewed as a weirdo perv. Walk close behind me. Like even if there's a lot of people around, there's no guarantee a man might not just decide to inappropriately touch me, or yell something sexist, or just stare at me and sexualize me when I'm literally just going about my damn day. I feel unsafe whenever I'm alone with an older man. Can't help it. I see a lot of guys say things like I wish women would just reject me directly so I don't keep trying. I promise that every woman knows at least one woman who has had a direct rejection go poorly, if they haven't had one themselves. Then there's the horror stories of women who were mutilated or killed for rejecting a guy. That's what plays in our heads when we say no, and that's why you don't hear it often. Some tips on when to disengage. A woman stops replying. One message after a reasonable period of at least a day, but preferably longer, is acceptable. In case her phone didn't alert her. But multiple messages or messages sent after only a few hours is not. The woman is slow to reply or gives one-word answers, often with no punctuation via text. If you're having a verbal conversation, one-word answers with little inflection are generally your cue. If meeting in person, if she's glancing around a lot or holding onto her things, she's probably looking for a way out and away from you. Take the L and let it happen. Some general tips. On dating apps, read her profile or look at her pictures and personalize your message based on that info. Her profile is there for a reason and is information she wants you to know. Don't go find her on FB, Twitter, Insta and comment on her interests she's expressed there. In person, be aware of your presence. Are you looming? Are you boxing her in? Where are your hands and what are you doing with them? Extended silence is a good indicator that the conversation is over. Exit as smoothly as possible. Don't try to guilt people. That is, I see I've made you uncomfortable, or sorry if I'm being weird. This is just life advice. Not even just with women. If you have made the other person uncomfortable, then a phrase like that has no good response. And if they aren't uncomfortable, they're going to be after that. "Oh well, I've gotta get going" is a lot more impactful. Learn to take an L. In baseball, hitting a .333 average is pretty good. You're going to strike out sometimes. Don't take it personally and move on. Dwelling on how wronged you've been by women is some serial killer. Accept what's happened. Feel your feelings. And then let it go. Slow down their car when I'm walking. Dude, check your phone down the street. Not pulled up next to a woman walking alone. Infuriates me how few men even think of how that looks. Choking during sex, being rough without asking. Ducking ask. It's not okay. Excessive staring. I feel like they're putting their gaze somewhere they shouldn't on my body. Being too aggressive in conversation. Not taking no for answer. Meeting me at my job and asking for my work schedule so they can see me more often. After reading these comments, I will never ask another gal out in a place where there isn't a clear way for them to exit. Not that I'm engaging in that behavior, but I never realized how much I take for granted my feeling of personal safety at almost all times. Sheesh ladies, how do y'all do it? And by it I mean exist. Insisting when I've already said no. At first I just get angry. Like, come on, I said no, move on and leave me alone. But the more they insist, the scarier it gets, because they usually get angrier and I have no way of knowing how they're going to react. Was friends with a really built guy. He came to my apartment one night for us to have dinner. I didn't have money to dine out at the time. After dinner and chatting, he asked if I wanted to have sex and I declined. He then said he was going to leave as it was late. He proceeded to stand there in my lounge just checking his phone for ages, and I realized that I genuinely couldn't fight him off if I needed to. I just let him stand there on his phone, genuinely terrified to speak to him and tell him to leave in case he got angry. Turns out he was waiting for his Uber to arrive and didn't mention he was waiting. If they raise a hand to your face, it means they could hit slap you. They, girls, run only where there are lights. They don't say anything but are both thinking the same thing. Guys never think about light. It just isn't a problem in their lives. When guys are scared of the dark, they're scared of ghosts and monsters. But when girls are scared of the dark, they're scared of guys. So Frederick Backman, us against you. When they test the waters about things, banking on you dismissing what they do as too minor to bother rocking the boat or making a fuss about. That's a form of grooming, and everyone can tell what your motivations are after the third time. You're probably thinking, oh, it isn't that serious. But while it might not be, what it winds up doing is, if you're trying to find out how far you can go in what you say or do, don't do it. Let others set that tone first. If you need an example, don't make sex race jokes until the people there at the expense of set that common ground. First,